Hello and welcome to the She Reads Romance Books podcast, the ultimate show for romance book lovers looking for the best books worth reading. I'm your host, Leslie Murphy, and in each short episode, I share my favorite book list of recommendations so you know exactly what to add to your must-read list. Join me as I explore the romance genre and have fun collecting book boyfriends along the way, because life is better with a love story. Hello, readers. Welcome back to the She Reads Romance Books podcast, where honestly, it has been a hot minute since I shared my latest reading list because life just got a bit crazy there for a few weeks where I was juggling the end of the school year for my kiddos, completing all of my continuing education courses for my acupuncture license and working and adulting, all the things. But rest assured, I still fit in a bunch of reading. I just didn't have time to put together my reading list until now. So in this episode, I am sharing mini book reviews of all of the romance books that I read in the months of May and June 2025. It's quite a lot of books with many new releases, and I will not be holding back in sharing whether I think that these are romance books that you should read and add to your TBR list, or if they might be a book that you just want to skip. Since I am combining 2 months worth of reading, this is truly going to be sort of a speed dating episode of books, giving you the quick and dirty, if you will. If you want more of my thoughts on these books, you can check out my full book reviews on shereadsromancebooks.com, or just send me over an email and I will gladly share my thoughts. Now, this episode is sponsored by a book that you are going to want to get your hands on as well. Christmas in July is here, and so is a first-of-its-kind holiday romantic comedy. Holiday Headlock by Terry Armstrong features wrestler Aaron McKellen returning home from the road at Christmas time after being away for many years, building a successful career in pro wrestling. He arrives in his hometown, welcomed by friends and family, but it's running into his high school crush that makes Holiday Headlock a Christmas to remember. Surrounded by a fun cast of characters you will never forget, Aaron must ultimately wrestle with whether to continue a life of fortune and fame or embrace the life he once desired with the girl of his dreams. Christmas romantic comedy meets pro wrestling, a perfect choice to read with your partner. Order your copy today on Amazon. All right, now diving into my May and June reading list to fill up your own TBR list of titles, or kicking things off is the She Reads Romance Books Book Club July Book of the Month, which is Sounds Like Love by Ashley Poston. I read an early reader copy of this book in May, and when I was done reading it, I instantly emailed Ashley's publicist and begged Ashley to join book club this month, as it's so good and you are just absolutely going to love it. If you love magical realism, which she's become known for in her romance books, you're definitely going to want to read this book, even if you aren't, a fan of sort of some magical realism. I think you're going to really enjoy the main love story between a former teen rock star and a struggling songwriter who sort of lost her muse, if you will. Joni and Sebastian end up having this telepathic connection, both hearing the same song melody and each other's thoughts in their own head. This is such a lovely romance between two people who find themselves with this unique connection that helps them out of their own ruts in their life and really move forward in life in terms of their own careers, their dreams, and of course, in love. It is hands down a must read. I'd love to chat about it with you in book club this month. Plus, Ashley herself is going to be joining us on Monday, July 28th. If you want a chance to chat with her about the book, I gave it 4.5 stars. Definitely add it to your TBR list. All right, next on my list was an advanced reader copy of Well, Actually by Maisie Eddings, which is a second chance romance that releases this August. Maisie uses a really fun story about a podcaster and journalist who's stuck in a pop culture interview show eating hot dogs to explore important topics such as, toxic masculinity, sexual exploration, communication in the bedroom, as well as workplace and cyberbullying. So all of those topics were thrown into this book, but in a really, really great package. And much to my surprise, the humor and snark is what captivated me with this novel right from the start. I had no idea that Maisie was this funny. This was my first book that I've read by her. Won't be my last. While I did think the heroine Eva was a bit harsh throughout this book, I really enjoyed the story and highly recommend it. I gave it 4 stars. Another advanced copy was my next read for the month, and that was of The Love Haters by Catherine Center, which I was so excited to read after she told us about her experience shadowing U.S. Coast Guard rescue swimmers for this book when she joined us in the She Reads Romance Books book club last summer. So Katie in this book, she is a mid-level video productionist who finds her job on the possible chopping block until she is offered an opportunity to make a recruiting video about Coast Guard rescue swimmers. So this gig puts her front and center before Hutch, who is a rescue swimmer, who's already, quote, famous for rescuing a celebrity's dog, and who truly appears to be the most perfect hero, like in the flesh. Top book boyfriend material, let me tell you. So their forced proximity at work and at the cottages where Katie ends up staying created the sweetest tension as these two came to know each and fall for each other. While I adored Hutch and became obsessed with his job, this story really is about Katie's transformation. So there are trigger warnings regarding eating disorders and body image with this one, but Catherine, I think, really handled it with such care. I did get annoyed with Hutch's brother Cole in this one, at times, and needless drama that just didn't really make sense, but I adored Hutch and Katie's love story for sure. Extra points for the sassy older ladies in the story as well. I gave it 4 stars. Another book I thoroughly enjoyed, and that on my reading list up next was The Blonde Identity by Ally Carter. It was such a fun read, you guys. Highly, highly recommend this one. Write it down now. The Blonde Identity by Ally Carter. It gave me all the vibes similar to the movie Argylle with Sam Rockwell and Bryce Dallas Howard, if you've ever seen that movie. It's about a woman who is mistaken as a spy and who has many harrowing events trying to evade the bad guys after her twin, mistaking her for her twin, with the help of another spy who she ends up falling for along the way. So Zoe is the heroine of the story, and she totally made the book. She was this innocent, sweet, but also really hilarious and brave woman. People always sort of treated her with soft gloves growing up, and I won't sort of spoil as to the reason why. But she ends up waking up with amnesia and has to go on the run with another spy, and she becomes pretty fearless throughout the story. The amnesia aspect to the story was genius because it was so fun how Zoe would make guesses as to who or what she was in real life, given the things that she'd find herself doing to stay safe. Spoiler, she is not a spy in real life. So she constantly found herself in these dangerous situations while trying to figure out why the bad people wanted her sister, which totally propelled the story along in this really fun, fast-paced way that had me hooked from the start. Now, Sawyer, he is the spy who is trying to help her and figure out what was going on. He was a really great match for Zoe, and I loved how his background and the truth slowly emerged about him. Ally really crafted a suspenseful rom-com that was so much fun to read. I highly recommend it. I think I gave it 5 stars. Now, finishing that one, I dove right into my advanced reader copy of the follow-up novel, which releases this August, and that is The Blonde Who Came In From the Cold by Ally Carter, which gives Zoe's twin sister story, who you did meet in The Blonde Identity. Now, while this book can be read as a standalone. I highly recommend reading The Blonde Identity first, just to get a really good idea of Alex's struggle in personal history for this new book. The Blonde Who Came In From the Cold starts off with a bang where Alex, she's Zoe's twin sister, wakes up handcuffed to Michael, the man who she joined the CIA with at the same time, and who she's pretty much sparred with on and off for over 10 years. You could instantly feel their connection and the tension that underlined their relationship while they tried to stay one step ahead of whoever was after them in the story. From there, the book sort of alternates between the present, where Alex and Michael are trying to figure out their predicament and uncover who's after them, with chapters from the past that give a really great backstory to their history of working together and how their current feelings developed. I found those past chapters really helpful and fun to see them returning to parts of the world that brought so many memories back for them in their relationship. So if you like slow burn romance, romantic suspense, and a caper that kind of has you hooked from moment to moment, then I think you will really enjoy The Blonde Who Came In From the Cold. I gave it 4 stars. My next read was The Magical Meet Cute by Jean Meltzer, which was my first book by Jean, who she's been on my radar for quite some time to read because I know that she is a force when it comes to representation of Judaism in the romance genre. I was immediately intrigued by this new romance because of the idea that a woman creates her ideal man out of clay. I mean, who wouldn't want that to be a possibility? So while Faith struggled to determine if she did indeed create the man of her dreams out of clay was really fun, Magical Meet Cute, for me at least, really became a lesson on Judaism and golems and an introduction to Jew witches, which I had honestly never heard about before. Plus, Meltzer does an amazing job of portraying past and present examples of anti-Semitism. And for these reasons, I think the book is very educational. The slow burn romance between Faye and Greg was cute, but I struggled to get into their story because honestly, the first 50% of the book felt just slow and repetitive, reiterating that he had no memory and her struggles with her past and her mom. And it was like, okay, I got it the first time, but I kind of felt like we needed more interaction between the two to really move the story along, and it just wasn't there. So after the halfway point of the story, it did pick up with this mystery of the paper boys, but by then I wasn't really invested in the story and kind of just found myself skimming. Did I think it was a cute premise for a story? Absolutely. Did I learn more than I expected? You bet. Was I wowed by the romance or execution of the story? Not really, but the writing itself I'd say was really good, so I gave it 3 stars overall. My next book is a perfect pick for any summer reading, and it releases this month, and that is These Summer Storms by Sarah MacLean. I devoured my advanced reader copy and highly recommend this book. Now, you may know Sarah, or the name Sarah MacLean, for her historical romances, but this was her sort of first foray into contemporary, and let me tell you, she knocked it out of the park. This is such an epic page-turner, about a pretty neurotic family with characters you feel sorry for 1 minute and then you totally want to bitch slap the next. I mean, they were like cray-cray. She weaves together chapters from each adult child's point of view with a really amazing romance that, despite being pretty quick, I mean, I think it was over a span of a week, kind of felt like a really hot slow burn at the same time. How she did this all in one book about a dead billionaire pulling strings from the grave is why, honestly, Sarah is an incredible author. The story begins with Alice, a woman who hasn't been home in over 5 years since an epic falling out with her father, who just passed away. And because of his death, he returns to their estate on a private island in Rhode Island, where she, her siblings, and mother are thrust into one of their father's infamous games in order to earn their inheritance from the eccentric billionaire. From there, you kind of learn about Alice's siblings, who are all dealing with their own issues from being a part of this wealthy and prominent family. Tasks are assigned, truths are unearthed, and secrets are revealed, all under the watchful eye of their father's second in command. Now, this book totally gave me Knives Out vibes, given the eccentric family and their desire for their inheritance. So, if you've seen that movie, this might appeal to you. This book will also appeal to those who like, women's fiction, romance, and suspense because it kind of weaves all three of those together. The chemistry between Alice and Jack, so perfect. I love their story and was so glad that Sarah didn't abandon her roots in, writing a really strong romance for this book. I love it. I think it should be made into a TV series. I gave it 4 stars. I next picked up Every Summer After by Carly Fortune, which honestly I had started when it first came out, but I didn't finish it because I wasn't interested in where the storyline was going. But I decided to circle back to it because I really wanted to read her new release, One Golden Summer. So while I was still irked by what transpired in Every Summer After, I'm glad I read it because I think it really helped to have that frame of reference leading into One Golden Summer. It's a second chance romance between Percy and Sam, who for 6 summers had been inseparable. And eventually their friendship turned into something more before it fell apart. So this is not my favorite Carly Fortune book, but it's really well written. And so I gave it 4 stars, but I was annoyed by how those two acted at the end. So it was kind of hard for me to love it for that reason. But after finishing that, I immediately read One Golden Summer, which just released in May, which gives Charlie's love story, who is Sam's older brother. Charlie is fantastic in this book. I loved everything about his character, who comes to befriend Alice, the heroine, who is spending the summer at the lake with her grandmother. Charlie just has this best personality, not taking any sass from Alice, but he also kind of holds him back from her. And you soon learn why. He honestly made me love this book. It's a great summer read, which I gave 4 stars to as well. Next, I dove into a few books in Kindle Unlimited, the first being Lessons in Heartbreak by Carla Sorensen, her new release. This one piqued my interest because it has the relationship coach trope in it, which I freaking love, where the Playboy football star helps the shy librarian who he used to know from high school get more confident in the dating world. Now, this book honestly was just an okay read for me, and I'm honestly even having a hard time remembering it, honestly, to talk more about it. I think I was ultimately disappointed that there wasn't more coaching to their story, or they're fake dating to help her learn some things. It was sweet, I think, overall, but nothing really jumped out at me, so I gave it 3 stars. Another book in Kindle Unlimited that I was so excited to read was Rewind It Back by Liz Tomford, the last in her Windy City series. To say I was looking forward to this was sort of an understatement. And I'll say, while I liked Rio's story and seeing the whole gang together, it honestly didn't quite meet my expectations. The previous books I think have rated all 5 stars or at least 4 stars. Overall, this is a second chance romance. It's well written, right? That's what I've come to expect from Liz. But I'm used to her books being the full package, meaning that the writing is incredible, but the characters are so compelling and the love story just so amazing that your heart is full the entire time you're reading it. Now, I loved Rio in the previous books, as I said. I didn't know what to make of him, though, in this story. I wanted to love it so badly, but it just felt repetitive, which made it also feel a little long. And don't even get me started on the reason for their breakup. And I think that's why, and for a few other reasons, that I was just left feeling blah, because I just didn't buy into the reason for their breakup at all and why they could just sweep it under the rug after seeing each other again. Plus, I think I needed more of them in the present to see them fall back into step again beyond just a few late night car rides that sort of faded to black in a meeting or two about the house renovations that the heroine was doing for Rio. Yeah, so I mean, I loved the idea of Hallie making mixtapes with songs that remind her of key moments in her life, but we've really never got a real sense of what those looked like beyond a song or two, and I really think that could have enriched the story. So even though this one didn't hit the mark for me, it's still one of my all-time favorite romance series, and I cannot wait for Monty's story, which she is actually going to give, and plus the new series I think that is hinted at with Ren and her brothers. So bring on more books, Liz. This one just didn't quite meet the mark for me. I gave it 3.5 stars. All right, moving right along, I next read an advanced reader copy of The Austen Affair by Madeline Bell. I think I've said this before, but this is the 250th anniversary of Jane Austen's birth here in 2025. So I'm reading as many new retellings of her work as I can this year. Belle kicks off this romance by instantly pulling on your heartstrings for the heroine who has recently lost her mother, who was a big Jane Austen fan. I really felt for Tess in the grief that she carries for her mother. She is actually currently cast in the movie of Northanger Abbey, where she is having a tough time connecting with her method acting co-star Hugh. But despite rubbing each other the wrong way, they are actually both thrust back into the Regency era England in a twist of fate. And while trying to find their way to return to their own present time, they end up sparking some real chemistry with one another. I'll say this book started off really strong for me because I loved Belle's humor in her writing. I instantly felt like I knew Tess and the grief that she was carrying and how important this movie was to her, given her mom and her failing career. And I also really liked seeing how she used her improv skills so many times in the past to help them blend in. Yet soon after their arrival in the past, the story just started to lose its charm for me. And because it lost its focus. I wasn't sure, was it about grief? Was it about Hugh's cold demeanor? Was it about Tess's history of going all in too soon with her relationships? I just didn't know where the story was going. It's kind of all over the place, and I didn't quite buy into their connection, despite their need to work together to get home to the present. So I did find myself skimming the last bit to get to the end, and because I just wasn't feeling their chemistry. While I think it will be a fun read for anyone who loves Jane Austen and it illustrates Belle's writing skills, the storyline itself just didn't pull weight for me to love it, so I gave it 3 stars. Okay, next I dove into the next 2 books in Bailey Hanna's Wells Ranch series, starting with Seeing Red and then Change of Heart. So Seeing Red is an oops pregnancy romance between 2 people who've known each other since they were teens growing up in a small town. Cassidy wanted to get over her recent ex by getting under someone else. But as I said, she ends up getting pregnant with Red. From there, I really liked how Red was trying to be a really good partner because he'd always had a thing for Cassidy. But honestly, it was hard for me to get past the guy chewing tobacco. I'm like, who does that still these days? It was so gross. But there are loads of, bedroom scenes, which got pretty hot. But Cassidy also is sort of hot and cold for a little too long for my taste. So I gave it 3.75 stars. And diving into the next one of the series, as I said, was Change of Heart. This was Denver's story and his second chance romance with the girl he fell for as a really young kid. Denver and Blair basically find their soulmates at the age of 12. And while it broke my heart that they spent so many years apart, I'm so glad that they were able to find their way back to one another without a lot of drama. But at the same time, I'm like, why did it guys take so freaking long? Because it was a simple reunion while Blair had to work through her trust issues, I really enjoyed the chapters that shared how their friendship and their love had developed over time in the past. And by the time you get to the past time period where they were 18 and falling apart, it was really gut-wrenching given what was happening at the time in both of their lives because you just knew they were soulmates destined to be together. This year, it seems to be the year of romance books that have dementia as a side theme, and this book is one of them. It doesn't overwhelm their own love story, but it was the impetus for her moving back to their small town and was a good side story to show how Denny was really trying to show that he could be there for her. So I enjoyed it. Check out some trigger warnings for some folks. I gave it 4 stars. Now, the last book on my May reading list, if you can believe it, was the audiobook for Quicksilver by Kelly Hart, which has duet narration, and it is fantastic. I think I talked about this in my newsletter recently. This book, it became my pick for the May 2025 Romance Book Reading Challenge, which was to read a fantasy romance. But I had started it last December when it had soon released, but I ended up stopping it. And I think it was just because it was too long. I was getting wrapped up in the holidays. I don't know, but I'm so glad I circled back because one, again, the audio duet narration is fantastic. It is a long romantasy, and so an even longer audiobook, but I just love the characters, and the pacing actually did keep the story moving right along. And I'm really excited for book 2 in the series already. This is an enemies to lovers fantasy romance where a human finds herself in the Fey world when she unknowingly opens a portal because turns out she's an alchemist, of which there haven't been any in recent years. She and Kingfisher do not get along when they first meet, but that soon changes as she learns more about the world that she's now in. The Quicksilver she's tasked to control, and the Fey man that she is falling for. It was so good. I gave it 4.5 stars. A must read if you love fantasy romance. All right, so on to my June reading list. If you are still with me, this one's a bit shorter since I was gearing up for my epic vacation out west, but I was able to crank through a few, including 7-Year Itch by Amy Dawes, which is book 2 in her Mountain Men series. This is an enemies to lovers romance with great tension and good body representation. Calder and Dakota had the best banter, given that they had 7 years of animosity to perfect it. These two did not hold anything back, but it also became clear that their barbs were also this form of foreplay for them. Because of their animosity, both Calder and Dakota could be real and honest with one another, even when they maybe couldn't be honest with their closest friends and family. So I really enjoyed learning about their inner struggles and how those struggles maybe impacted any potential relationships they were going to have. And I really loved, the best part, how Calder took it upon himself to help Dakota's confidence in the bedroom after learning about her ex's horrible comments. His list of exploits to try was really fun and hot. A great way for them to start developing feelings for one another. I did, to be honest, expect Everly, his niece, to have a bigger role in the story, like in book 1, because she's kind of the same factor in all of these books in the series of finding mates for her uncles. But it didn't really include much of that other than her being the reason why they had to share a room in Mexico. But that's okay. I'm really not sure where Luke's story is going to go, but we're going to get that one in December. Some hints were dropped, but I am excited for his happily ever after next. I gave Calder's story 4 stars. My next read was in Kindle Unlimited and a recommendation from Karen in the She Reads Romance Books book club, which was to read Revive Me by Nikki Castle. This is a type of forbidden romance where an injured MMA fighter falls for the physical therapist tasked with getting him to walk again. This was a real emotional book given what Roman has to fight through, but it's such a good love story. If you want to put your heart through the ringer, I'm not going to share too many spoilers about it, but in a good way, then I would definitely check out Revive Me by Nikki Castle. It was a great recommendation. I gave it 4 stars. My next book was Allie Hazelwood's latest problematic summer romance, which is an age gap romance that seems to be putting people in a tizzy for some reason. But the age gap is 14 years, really not a big deal, and is something that the hero of the story really struggled with throughout the book. To be honest, I had a hard time with this one at the start because Connor was acting kind of like a jerk. Maya, however, was really cool. She's a strong, smart heroine, who you come to expect from Allie's books. But I might not have kept going if anyone else had written it. That being said, once I did get deeper into the book and Connor finally started sharing his feelings, those moments were like 5-star moments for me with Allie's amazing writing and dialogue. So if you're an Allie fan, you do have to read this book. And I think you can read it without even having read Not in Love, though this does follow that book. It highlights the wedding of the couple from that book. It just wasn't an absolute favorite of mine when I come to think of her work, but I am glad that I read it. I gave it, I think, 4 stars. Next up was another modern Jane Austen retelling, which releases later this year in November. I read an advanced reader copy of the book Anne of Avenue A by Audrey Beliza, if I'm saying her name right, and Emily Harding, who I had never read before, but this is their third modern retelling in their For the Love of Austen series. Anne of Avenue A is a modern retelling of Persuasion, the emotional second chance romance that brings Anne and Frederick back together after 8 years apart, despite their love never fading. In this romance, Anne and Freddie fell in love in college, but when it comes to plans after college, the planner and the dreamer wanted different things despite their love for one another. So Anne essentially broke up with Freddie so that he wouldn't throw away a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, but that set them on this path of 8 years apart until they ran into each other again when Freddie moves back to New York and inadvertently buys Anne's family apartment. While this story didn't really pull in too many iconic moments from the classic, as I anticipated, it is a well-written story that will have you rooting for them once again. So if you love second chance romance, I would give it a whirl. I will definitely be reading more from this duo. I gave it 3.5 stars. If you follow me, then you may remember that If Tomorrow Never Comes by Allison Ashley was our June 2025 book of the month for the She Reads Romance Books Book Club. I read it again in preparation for our discussion and fell in love with it even more, but I also had the chance in June to read an advanced reader copy of Ashley's next novel called Falling into Place, which releases in August. And this book gives you the love story of Carly, the heroine of the story, who is actually a character in If Tomorrow Never Comes. But to be quite honest, you can absolutely read Falling into Place as a standalone, as there's zero connection to that book. No mention of what transpired in that story or her connection to those characters. So you can feel free just to pick this one up without issue. You meet Carly 2 years after she moves back to her hometown of Oklahoma City to pursue her love of fashion as a career. She's only doing the fashion/personal styling gig part-time, however, while juggling a boring accounting job to pay the bills. But she is presented with an opportunity from her best friend that might get her the coveted full-time job at her fashion firm. So the catch is that she has to personally style her best friend's older brother, a hot doctor who has become socially isolated and maybe a bit depressed over the 14 years that it's taken for him to become an intensivist in an ICU unit in the hospital. He has reluctantly agreed to become showcased as sort of the, quote, bachelor of OKC for his sister's magazine to breathe life into its circulation and subscription, but the payout turns to be his connection with Carly. Now, despite knowing the risks of acting on what becomes their mutual feelings, they really can't help themselves, and so it was really fun seeing them admit their feelings to one another while trying to keep it hush-hush. I love so many things about this romance, including Brooks's relationship with his sisters and how he saw right into their ploy at the beginning, his experience as an ICU doctor, his relationship with his former coach, their mutual love of cats and their quirky hobbies, the vegetable jokes, so much more. I only wish I could meet, honestly, someone with Carly's talent to help me pick out some awesome wardrobe finds like she does in this book. And don't even get me started on Brooks's dating profile that she includes in here. It was like major swoon. Allison is such an incredible writer, from her character development to story pacing, and she just sort of grabs you with her every character that you just want more, honestly. So I definitely recommend this book and her writing. I gave it 4 stars. Okay, the last book, oh my gosh, to round out my June reading list was an advanced reader copy of He Falls First by Jill Shalvis, which releases in August. This is the first in a brand new series that she is kicking off, and let me tell you, I will be reading every book in this series. Jill does such a great job of setting up the entire family of Colburn siblings, and as I said, I need all of their stories ASAP. But this was the story of Ryder, the eldest brother, who falls for Penny, who has just returned to town to take care of her grandmother and her much younger stepbrother, who is nursing sort of her own painful past, as her last boyfriend was an abuser. So trigger warnings in this book, although nothing on page. It had been so long since I read a Jill Shalvis book, but it was honestly like coming home to her work with this swoony romance. Ryder, the hero, he was such a patient and kind book boyfriend who honestly had his own demons to wrestle with, but he was all in with Penny. Obviously, the title, He Falls First. Pick this one up definitely for an enjoyable read with a great family that you are just going to want more of to come. So I know that I definitely will be keeping up on when these next ones release. This was 4 stars for sure. Now I'm actually reading one more for June, which was my pick for the June Romance Book Reading Challenge, which was to read one queer romance. And that is my advanced reader copy of Every Step She Takes by Alison Cochrane. I'm not quite done, so I don't, or at least before recording this, so I don't want to give my full thoughts on it quite yet. So you'll just have to stay tuned for my thoughts on that for the next one when I share my July reading list. But wow, that was a long list. Thanks so much for sticking with me. I hope I gave you some good food for thought when it came to these existing and soon to be released titles in terms of what you may want to read and what you might not. Thanks so much for tuning in. And if you love listening to my episodes, don't forget to give me a little shout out with a review on your favorite podcast platform. I would so appreciate it. Until next time, happy reading, because life is better with a love story. That's all for this episode of the She Reads Romance Books podcast. I hope you enjoyed it and found some new books to add to your TBR list. If you did, please subscribe, rate, and review the show on your favorite podcast app. It really helps me reach more romance book lovers like you, and I appreciate your support. If you're a book boyfriend collector like me, then you'll want to join my email list so you never miss a podcast episode or a new book list. Just visit shereadsromancebooks.com/join and sign up today. As a thank you, I'll instantly send you my list of top 10 book boyfriends that will make you swoon. Trust me, you don't want to miss this list. Thank you for listening, and until next time, happy reading.